This family spent 50 years building an unstoppable wrestling empire in Toronto. Maple Leaf Wrestling was their fortress, and nobody could get in. But when the king died, the biggest threat wasn't from the outside, it was a traitor on the inside. This is the insane story of how one man made a secret deal with Vince McMahon and sold out his family's 50-year legacy for a fake job title. Before the 80s, wrestling was basically a bunch of small kingdoms, not the global giant it is today. These were the territories, regional promotions that all agreed not to invade each other. And watching over all of them was the National Wrestling Alliance, or NWA. This system let dozens of wrestling businesses succeed all at once. And in the most powerful territory in all of North America, Toronto, one man was king, Frank Tunney. But the story actually starts with a guy named Jack Corcoran. In 1931, he made a genius move and got the exclusive rights to hold wrestling matches in the brand new Maple Leaf Gardens. This one move made Toronto a wrestling mega hub for the next 60 years. Working for Corcoran were two brothers, John and Frank Tunney. John booked the matches and Frank handled the money, learning every secret of the business. In 1939, Corcoran got sick and handed the entire company over to the Tunney brothers. It looked like the perfect partnership. But then, disaster struck. Just months after taking over, John Tunney died suddenly. He was only 32 years old. Frank Tunney was left to run the entire company completely alone. It was a struggle, but Frank knew he needed a local hero, and he found the perfect guy, Whipper Billy Watson. This dude was so popular he brought over 5 million fans to watch him wrestle. That is an insane number. With Watson as his star, Toronto became a powerhouse. Frank's influence was so massive he became a key player in the NWA. Joining the NWA meant that literally every single big star in the world had to come to Toronto. Legends like Buddy Rogers, Gene Kiniski, and Lou Thez all had to step into Frank's ring. Frank wasn't just a local promoter, he was a wrestling mastermind. He was so respected, his peers elected him president of the entire NWA in 1960. He was so smart, he even bought a piece of another wrestling company just to make sure their champion would show up at his events. The Toronto office was a machine, pulling in up to 15,000 fans twice a week during the 70s. Can you imagine that? The formula was simple. Bring in local stars, guarantee the world champion would be there, and make smart deals. In 1978, he partnered with Jim Crockett Jr., which brought in a new superstar named Ric Flair. Fans were seeing stacked cards with multiple world titles on the line every night. And then he did the impossible. On March 25, 1979, he booked a champion versus champion match that no one else could pull off. WWF champion Bob Backlund versus a WA champion Nick Bockwinkel. The arena was electric. Frank Tunney wasn't just a promoter, he was the godfather of Canadian wrestling. For 50 years, this fortress was untouchable. But no king can rule forever. But then the 80s hit, and everything started to change. Cable TV was beaming local shows all over the country, and a young, super ambitious guy named Vince McMahon Jr. took over his dad's company. He didn't want to be friends with the other kingdoms, he wanted to conquer them. Vince had zero respect for tradition. He saw the other territories as companies to be bought out, and he started a corporate war that completely changed wrestling forever. One by one, companies that had existed for generations started to fall, their biggest stars leaving for Vince's money and TV exposure. And right in the middle of this chaos, the worst thing imaginable happened. In May of 1983, Frank Tunney, the King of Toronto, died. His kingdom was now completely vulnerable. The keys to the kingdom were handed to two guys, Frank's son Eddie and his nephew, Jack Tunney. Jack had been in the family business for decades and was ready to take charge. At first, everything seemed fine. They continued partnering with Jim Crockett's promotion, bringing in stars like Ric Flair. But things were already going bad. The once-packed arena started seeing empty seats. The rumor was that Crockett was so busy fighting the WWF, he was sending his B team to Toronto. The excitement was dying. Jack could see the writing on the wall. The WWF was a monster truck rolling over everyone. He had three choices: fight a war he would definitely lose, slowly go out of business, or join the winning team. So, while publicly promising to be loyal, Jack started making secret phone calls. He was a businessman trying to keep wrestling alive in his city. He saw the massive money and TV exposure the WWF had. The NWA offered tradition. Vince McMahon offered survival. The fortress was about to be broken into from the inside. July 1984. To the fans, everything looked normal. The ads promised all their favorite stars. But behind closed doors, a 50-year legacy was being sold. Then, with zero warning, Jack Tunney dropped a bombshell that shocked the entire wrestling world. He cut all ties with his NWA partners and announced he was joining Vince McMahon's WWF. It was insane! Overnight, all the stars fans loved, Ric Flair, Harley Race, Ricky Steamboat, were gone. Banned from the building. And replacing them was a new army of literal giants. Hulk Hogan, Rowdy Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, and Andre the Giant. Hulkamania had taken over Toronto. This was a complete betrayal. His uncle Frank spent his whole life building this NWA powerhouse, and Jack tore it all down in one business deal. He basically opened the front door and gave the keys to the invaders. So why would he do it? Honestly, from a business standpoint, it was a genius move. The NWA was dying, and fighting the WWF was a guaranteed loss. Siding with Vince didn't just mean survival, it meant Jack was about to get rich. His deal meant the WWF produced the shows and he got a cut. On top of that, the deal gave Jack exclusive rights to promote wrestling at Maple Leaf Gardens until 1995. This meant no other wrestling company could run a show in the biggest arena in the city. He completely locked out all the competition. But it wasn't just about money. For betraying his family and handing over a legendary company, Vince McMahon gave Jack a new job. He became the on-screen president of the entire WWF. Here's the crazy part. It wasn't a real job. It was a character he played on TV. He was the first big boss character in the WWF, long before Mr. McMahon himself. As president, Jack was on TV all the time, suspending Andre the Giant and stripping Ted DiBiase of the championship title. He traded his family's kingdom for a fake title. The legendary Maple Leaf Wrestling name was just a sticker they put on the WWF's Canadian show. And after 2 years, they threw that away too. The company was completely erased. Losing Toronto was a huge blow to the NWA in their war with the WWF. And for the Tunney family, the deal literally tore them apart, pushing Frank's own son out of the business. The family business was no longer a family business. It was a franchise. Jack Tunney had secured his own future, but he had to sell the soul of the company to do it. The betrayal was complete. Instantly, Jack's deal created a golden age for the WWF in Canada. With Toronto as their base, Hulkamania ran wild. The arena that was seeing empty seats was now packed every single night. Jack bet on the future instead of the past, and for a while, he won big. His role as the fake WWF president made him a huge part of the show when it was exploding in popularity. He was front and center for the contract signing for WrestleMania 6 in Toronto, which had a record-breaking crowd of almost 68,000 people. It was the absolute peak of wrestling in Canada, and Jack was in the middle of it all. But remember, he was only a president on TV. He was an employee playing a scripted role. He traded being a real king for playing a fake one on television. This deal had massive consequences. All the unique local wrestlers and different styles were gone. replaced by just one brand of wrestling, the WWF's. If you were a Canadian wrestler, the only way to get famous now was to go through Vince McMahon. Jack's exclusive contract finally ran out in 1995, and after one last show, the WWF closed its Toronto office, and Jack Tunney's TV character just disappeared. He retired from wrestling and pretty much vanished from the public eye. So, was he a traitor who sold out his family for money and fame? Or a genius businessman who made the only move he could to keep wrestling alive in his city? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He definitely saved wrestling in the city for a while and made himself famous, but he did it by erasing the identity of one of the greatest wrestling companies ever. Jack Tunney died from a heart attack on January 24, 2004, and with him, the final piece of a 50-year dynasty was gone forever. The fortress his uncle built was just a memory. The family name that was once wrestling royalty in Toronto became a footnote in the history of the global empire it helped create. It's an insane story about how, in the brutal world of business, loyalty means nothing. And sometimes, the person who destroys a kingdom is the one who was supposed to be its next king. I want to know what you guys think. Was Jack Tunney a genius businessman or a total traitor? Let me know in the comments right now. And if you can't believe this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more insane wrestling stories you've never heard before. The story of Maple Leaf Wrestling shows you exactly how the old wrestling world died. It's an epic story of family, betrayal, and a guy who took over the world. For 50 years, one man built an untouchable legacy, making Toronto the envy of everyone. And in the end, it only took one deal from his own nephew to make the entire thing crumble. The Tunney name is gone from wrestling, but the crazy story of how their kingdom ended is one of the biggest betrayals in the history of the sport.